It started subtly, the way rot often does, hidden beneath a veneer of family obligation and shared history. I watched my daughter, Sarah, and her husband, Mark, become increasingly comfortable treating my home as an extension of their own, my time as theirs to command, and my finances as a backup for their fluctuating needs. I was recently widowed, adrift in a silence I hadn't anticipated, and perhaps, in my loneliness, I was too eager to fill the void with the bustling chaos of their lives, especially those of my 2 grandchildren. Before we dive into the story, let us know where you're watching from in the comments below, and if you believe families should protect, not exploit each other. Hit that like button and subscribe for more. I had spent a lifetime building a comfortable life for myself and my late husband. We weren't wealthy, but we were secure. A decent pension, a paid-off house, savings tucked away for a rainy day, and to ensure I wouldn't be a burden on anyone. My children, Sarah and my son, David, had received help when they needed it, down payments on houses, help with car repairs, covering unexpected medical bills. I believed that was what families did. They supported each other. But what she discovered next would force her to choose between family loyalty and self-preservation. My house was a modest, comfortable bungalow filled with memories. Sarah, Mark, and their 2 children, Leo, who was nearing 12, and little Emily, 5, lived across town. David lived further away and, bless him, seemed to grasp the concept of boundaries. Sarah and Mark, however, were constant fixtures. They'd drop Leo off for hours without notice, expecting me to entertain him. They'd ask me to babysit Emily last minute, often canceling plans I had made. Financial requests became more frequent, initially framed as urgent needs, a car repair absolutely necessary for Mark's job, an unexpected school fee for Leo. I always helped, dipping into savings more often than I liked, reassured by Sarah's vague promises to pay me back, promises that never materialized. Mark had lost his job a few months prior, and the requests intensified. They spoke constantly about their financial struggles, painting a picture of near destitution, while still managing new phones and occasional nights out. It felt like a constant, low-grade pressure, making me feel guilty for having any savings at all. I overheard Sarah on the phone once, complaining about how tight things were and how Mom really needs to help us out more. It stung, but I rationalized it away. They were stressed, young, struggling. They didn't mean to sound so entitled. The incident happened on a Tuesday afternoon. Leo was at my house, supposedly doing homework, though he was mostly glued to his tablet. He was a difficult child, prone to outbursts, disrespectful, and often ignored by his parents unless he was demanding something. I was making tea in the kitchen. The kettle had just boiled. I turned to pour it, and Leo came stomping in, yelling about the Wi-Fi being slow. I asked him to wait a moment, that I was handling something hot. He didn't like being told to wait. He lunged towards the counter, grabbing the handle of the kettle I had just lifted. He yanked hard. The kettle tilted. Boiling water splashed out, cascading onto my hand and arm. The pain was immediate, searing, unbelievable. I cried out, dropping the kettle, stumbling back. Leo, shocked for a split second, immediately burst into tears, not of remorse, but of fear at the commotion and the mess he'd caused. Sarah arrived minutes later, summoned by Leo's panicked call to her, filled with a version of events where I had somehow been negligent. The focus wasn't on my scalded skin, blistering and agonizingly painful. It was on calming Leo, who was still crying loudly. "He's just a kid, Mom. He didn't mean it," Sarah insisted, pulling Leo into a hug, glaring at me as if I were the one who had caused the scene. Mark arrived soon after, echoing her sentiment. "Kids have accidents, Carol. You need to be more careful with hot things around him." They dismissed the severity of my injury, focusing on minimizing Leo's responsibility and, by extension, their own lack of supervision or discipline. They offered no real apology, no genuine concern for my pain. They begrudgingly took me to the minor emergency clinic after I insisted, complaining about the wait time. Sitting in the clinic, the throbbing pain in my arm a constant, brutal reminder, their words echoed in my head. He's just a kid who had deliberately yanked a heavy kettle of boiling water out of my hand because he was impatient. And they saw nothing wrong with his action, only with my reaction or my alleged carelessness. In that sterile, uncomfortable room, the fog of denial began to lift. This wasn't just a one-off incident. It was a culmination of years of disregard, of them seeing me not as a person with feelings, needs, and boundaries, but as a resource to be exploited, a free service provider, a bank. The physical pain was acute, but the pain of this realization, the cold, hard truth of their indifference and entitlement, was far deeper. Something inside me shifted irrevocably. I wasn't angry in a hot, impulsive way. I was cold, calculating, and absolutely resolved. This was the moment I stopped being mom or grandma in the way they expected. I became an individual, a property owner, a person with rights they had just fundamentally violated. Returning from the clinic, my arm bandaged and throbbing, they dropped me off with perfunctory instructions to rest. They didn't offer to stay, didn't help me into the house, didn't even offer to make me something to eat. They were eager to get back to their own lives now that the crisis was over. As I watched their car pull away, a chilling calm settled over me. The trust was not just broken, it was obliterated. I needed to protect myself, my future, my peace. And I needed to do it in a way they would understand, a way that spoke to their true motivations. My house felt different that night. No longer a safe haven, but a place where I had been injured and dismissed. I moved slowly, carefully, my bandaged arm a constant physical reminder of the betrayal. My mind, however, felt sharp and clear. I thought back over the years, the loans never repaid, the times I'd covered their rent or utilities, the expectation that I would pay for things for the grandchildren that were clearly their responsibility. It wasn't just generosity anymore, it had become an expectation, an entitlement. The boiling water incident was the brutal punctuation mark on a long sentence of casual exploitation. I started small. The next morning, I went to my safe deposit box at the bank. I hadn't opened it in years. Inside were old documents, some jewelry, and tucked into an envelope, a lottery ticket. My husband and I had a tradition of buying one together every week. This one was from several months ago, one we had bought just before he got sick. We never checked them, we just enjoyed the ritual. I had tucked it away, a small, forgotten memento. On a whim, back at home, I checked the numbers online. My breath hitched. It was a winner. Not a multi-million-dollar jackpot, but a significant amount, enough to pay off their fictitious debts to me many times over, enough to secure my future comfortably, enough to make my house truly mine again without the shadow of their expectations. The win felt less like luck and more like a sign. A sign that I had the means not just to protect myself, but to create a future where I wasn't dependent on or exploited by others. But first, I had to secure it, and I had to secure my life. I didn't tell anyone about the ticket. Not a soul. It was my secret, my leverage, my quiet weapon. Over the next few weeks, while my burn healed slowly, I began my methodical process. I started documenting everything. I dug out old bank statements, highlighting every transfer I'd made to Sarah or Mark over the past 5 years. I found old text messages and emails asking for money, asking me to babysit, making demands on my time. I started keeping a meticulous journal, detailing every interaction, every dismissive comment, every time they overstepped boundaries. I even recorded the conversation with Sarah and Mark after the burning incident, their voices clear and indifferent, minimizing what had happened. It felt cold and calculated, but the image of their faces, prioritizing Leo's discomfort over my physical pain, hardened my resolve. My next step was legal. I found a lawyer specializing in elder law and family disputes. I was nervous walking into his office, But Mr. Harrison was kind and listened patiently as I laid out the years of subtle manipulation, culminating in the physical injury and their shocking lack of empathy. I showed him the bank statements, the messages, my journal entries, and the recording. He was visibly concerned, especially by the recording and the severity of the injury dismissed so easily. He explained my rights regarding my property, my finances, and protection from potential harassment or exploitation. He confirmed that while family loans were tricky to recoup without formal agreements, the pattern of behavior, the lack of respect for my boundaries and safety, and the deliberate injury constituted grounds for legal action, potentially including a restraining order if their behavior escalated. We discussed options for protecting my assets, revising my will, which currently left everything equally to Sarah and David, and establishing clear legal boundaries. I didn't mention the lottery ticket yet. It felt like too much, too soon. I wanted to secure my foundational rights first. Meanwhile, Sarah and Mark, sensing my distance, I wasn't answering calls instantly, wasn't agreeing to last-minute demands, began to increase the pressure. They called constantly, fishing for information about my healing. Are you okay? Leo feels so bad, which I knew was a lie, complaining about their financial state again. We don't know how we'll pay the electric bill this month, and subtly guilting me. We just feel like you haven't been yourself since the accident. We miss you. I kept my responses brief, polite, and non-committal. I was busy, resting, not up for visitors. I needed space. Their concern wasn't for me. It was for the disruption my distance caused to their routine of relying on me. They saw my withdrawal as a threat to their free childcare and personal ATM. This was confirmed during a particularly unpleasant phone call with Sarah. She was venting about money again, hinting heavily that I should help. When I gently suggested that perhaps they needed to adjust their spending, she exploded. Adjust our spending? Are you serious, Mom? We're struggling. It's not like you need the money. You just sit on it. After everything we do for you, you can't even help us out when we need it. The audacity was breathtaking. Everything you do for me, Sarah? I asked, my voice dangerously low. Like when Leo threw boiling water on me in my own kitchen and you told me to be more careful. Like dropping your kids off without notice and expecting me to entertain them. Like asking for money constantly with no intention of ever paying it back. There was a stunned silence, then her voice rose, shrill and defensive. Oh, so that's what this is about? You're blaming Leo for an accident? He's just a kid. You're being ridiculous, Mom. We are your family. Family helps family. Are you saying you won't help us with the electric bill? After all we're going through? I'm saying, I replied calmly, the words feeling like stones dropping into place, that I will not be helping you with the electric bill. Or any other bills. You are adults. It is time you started taking responsibility for your own lives. I hung up before she could respond, my hand trembling slightly, not from fear, but from the sheer force of containing my anger. This conversation was more evidence, more confirmation that their view of family was transactional, based solely on what they could extract from me. Mr. Harrison had advised me to stand firm and document their reactions. The pressure escalated. Mark called, trying a different tactic, booming joviality mixed with subtle threats. Now, Carol, let's not get hasty. We're family. We should work this out. Sarah tells me you're being unreasonable. You know us, taking care of things for you. Later on. Depends on how cooperative you are now. The thinly veiled threat of trying to gain control over my affairs in the future, perhaps questioning my competency, was clear. I calmly stated that I had legal representation and all future discussions about my finances or property should go through my lawyer. That shut him up quickly, replaced by a sputtering disbelief. I met with Mr. Harrison again. I showed him the recorded conversation with Sarah and recounted the conversation with Mark. He advised me to change the locks on my house immediately and consider installing a security camera. It felt drastic, but necessary. I also decided it was time to discuss the lottery ticket. Mr. Harrison's eyebrows shot up. He explained the process of claiming it anonymously through a trust or LLC to protect my identity and assets from further family claims or potential legal challenges. This significant influx of funds drastically changed my legal strategy options, allowing for more aggressive asset protection and creating a clearer separation from their expected inheritance. While the locks were being changed and a basic security system installed, I quietly opened a new bank account at a different bank across town, linked to the legal entity Mr. Harrison was setting up for the lottery winnings. I began the process of transferring most of my existing savings into this new, protected account. My old accounts were the ones Sarah and Mark had access to information about, the ones they expected to inherit. Securing the lottery money and my existing savings was paramount. Sarah and Mark were furious when they discovered the locks were changed. They showed up unannounced, banging on the door. I didn't answer. They left angry voicemails, accusing me of being paranoid, unloving, and casting them out. I forwarded the voicemails to Mr. Harrison. Their overconfidence, their belief that they had an inherent right to access my home and my resources, was leading them to make mistakes, providing me with more evidence of harassment and disrespect. The smoking gun wasn't a single discovery, but the cumulative weight of evidence. The financial records showing years of unrepaid loans, the messages demanding money and time, the recording of their dismissal of the boiling water incident, their increasing harassment after I set boundaries, and finally, the clear legal threat made by Mark. Combined with the protected lottery winnings and secured assets, I had the legal standing and the financial means to act decisively. Mr. Harrison was confident we could pursue legal action for financial exploitation and potentially seek a restraining order based on the pattern of harassment and the physical injury incident. The time had come to execute the plan. Mr. Harrison drafted the necessary legal documents. A formal letter was sent to Sarah and Mark, detailing the history of financial support, stating it was considered a loan with clear expectations of repayment, using the evidence I had gathered, and outlining the expectation that all future contact regarding financial matters or access to my property must go through his office. It also stated that any further harassment would result in legal action. Simultaneously, steps were taken to revise my will and estate plan, removing them as beneficiaries and establishing legal trusts to manage my assets, including the lottery winnings, for my benefit and potentially for David, if I chose, but explicitly excluding Sarah, Mark, and Leo due to their actions. Little Emily's future care was handled separately, ensuring her well-being without enabling her parents access to funds. One crisp autumn morning, a process server arrived at their house and delivered the legal letter. I wasn't there, but I could well imagine the scene. The carefully worded document, laying bare their years of entitlement and outlining the legal consequences of their actions and my new boundaries, must have landed like a bomb. The immediate aftermath was exactly as Mr. Harrison predicted. Shock, then panic, then rage. They called me, not with apologies or attempts at reconciliation, but with threats and accusations. "You can't do this," Sarah shrieked. "We're your family. You're cutting us off? After everything?" Mark was even more aggressive, accusing me of being manipulated by lawyers, threatening to contest any changes to the will, and questioning my mental state, the very threat he had made earlier. I did not engage. Every call, every message was forwarded directly to Mr. Harrison. He informed them that any further contact with me would be considered harassment and grounds for a restraining order. The realization that I was not backing down, that I had legal representation, and that I had meticulously documented everything, stripped away their power. They couldn't bluff or guilt their way out of this. Their attempts to rally other family members against me also failed. When presented with the evidence, particularly the recording and the details of the boiling water incident and their reaction, most were appalled, or at least chose not to get involved in the legal mess. The most crushing blow for them came not just from being cut off financially, but from the quiet, dignified way I had done it entirely on my terms. Their panic intensified when they realized I had significantly more resources than they ever knew about, thanks to the protected lottery winnings, and that these resources were now legally untouchable by them. Their anticipated inheritance, the safety net they felt entitled to and had perhaps banked on, was gone. The regret they felt wasn't about harming me, it was about losing access to my perceived wealth. Their dismissal of my injury, their casual cruelty, their sheer entitlement had cost them dearly. Slowly, the calls and messages from them dwindled. The legal letter and Mr. Harrison's stern follow-up made it clear I was serious and prepared. My house became my sanctuary again. With the locks changed, the security system in place, and my finances legally protected, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't experienced in years. The legal victory wasn't a dramatic courtroom scene, but a quiet affirmation of my rights. The restraining order wasn't necessary in the end, as they ceased direct contact under the threat of it. My revised will and trusts were legally sound. Their consequences were primarily financial and social, losing access to my resources and facing the quiet judgment of those family members who knew the truth. They were left to deal with their own financial struggles without their safety net. I still had a relationship with David, who was supportive and understanding throughout. I established a trust fund for little Emily, ensuring she would have opportunities her parents might not provide, but with strict conditions that prevented her parents from accessing the funds. Leo, I suspected, would learn harsh lessons later in life, perhaps realizing that actions have consequences, even if his parents hadn't taught him that. My life was different now, quieter, but filled with a profound sense of self-respect. I had stood up for myself, protected what was mine, and refused to be a victim of familial exploitation. The scars on my arm were a reminder of the pain, but also of the turning point. I had faced betrayal and found the strength to walk away, not empty-handed, but with my dignity and security intact. My boundaries were firm, my peace was non-negotiable, and I finally had the quiet, protected life I deserved. Thanks for watching till the end. If you enjoyed this story, give this video a like if you haven't already, and subscribe for more stories about standing up for yourself.